Okay, well that was great sharing with you, and that was the first performance of Herbsttag, and this is a song cycle, and it's and I'm fond of saying it's an academic year song cycle. It begins with autumn day and goes to winter, where we are in real time, and then there's early spring and summer. So, and most canonical four seasons like Vivaldi or Haydn begin with spring and end with winter, sort of like the path of a life. So in this case, here are the four seasons, and there are two poets, and Rilke and then Hebel, who was a 19th century German poet, well known in Germany. 100 years ago, there were 1 million PhD theses on Hebel about his use of color, and so as you can see, it alternates. And what's interesting, and what you've just heard, we're very excited because this is the first time that there's a contrast in the performance between Rilke and Hebel, and you can see the epic ambitions of the whole cycle. And there'll be another half at some point, and we'll share that. We'll share the whole thing. It started because the next slide. I wrote the Summer Picture, which is a famous poem in German, and didn't think of making a whole cycle. But it ended in a grand way, and it just seemed that it was the end of something. So since it was so, I wrote three, or conceived of three prequels. And I set the Hebel poetry first, and then the Rilke, which you just heard, and not to mince words, Hebel is a fine poet, but he's not as fine as Rilke, and what that means is that that's not problematic in the least for music, because the music just responds differently and does more. In the Hebel poems, there's more suffering and cruelty, and Rilke doesn't have that cruelty, but he has his own suffering. But anyway, so that's anyway. But I won't belabor that, because you've just heard what I've done with each poet. Okay, so the next slide, and I want to be very brief here. So is something I'm quoting. This is from Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics, a book of thinking about comics told in comic form. And the topic tonight is something out of nothing. And I guess in the vacuum as regards money is called being broke. And so this is, I found this very funny, and it's also the idea of, which you can read, when someone borrowing from the future. And when I saw this, this is how I think. I said, that's just like composing. So I'm not going to be able to explain that to you. So what I did was customize a version of this, which now I'm going to go to. And at this point, this is Carl Stevens, who was the graphic artist for the Boston Phoenix, if you ever read Failure or whatever, and he has various books and shows at Carroll and Sons Gallery. And it's a long story why we have this, but we do, and it's amazing. And so in this case, the idea of writing music that, I mean, it really does come from nothing. I mean, nobody asked for this, and it's a sort of a story of how it began. And once it did, there was the question of how to compose Herbsttag. And so this is sort of it has a teaching value. But let's go to the last frame, which you've just seen. And in Sommerbild, there's, that's what's, oh, I have a pointer here. That's what this is. And so let me just play that little passage. And that's S regte. So you haven't heard that. That's from Zomerbild, which we're not performing tonight. So what did I do? I stole from the future of the piece in order to begin Herbsttag. So what is this? That is the beginning of what you just heard, and it's, well, there. So this, and then, because what I basically did was take some dreamy material from later and apply a function to essentially put it in a bad mood. I mean, not a mood of restiveness and uncertainty, and so. And now this is a very ordinary thing in composition. You use themes all the time. Things are not composed sequentially, but it explains why I like that previous cartoon. Okay. And I wanted the element of surprise. There are copies of this that you can take on your way out because there's a lot more information embedded in here, and so you're welcome to take a copy at the desk and study it. Okay, so now, and this is just what I played you before. It just showed this is my score of Zomerbild, which comes later. Those two, there's the S regte, and then this is the passage in the cartoon, which is right near the beginning. Okay, so next. I'm going to introduce a concept. This was actually invented by Lewis Carroll, where you take a word and you change one letter until you get another word. And so the concept here is what is the musical equivalent of this? So this is a music ladder, and this is from the 70s. I can't find it on YouTube, but John Belushi came out as Beethoven a lot in those days. And the way you change words one to the other, I'll just show you. It's like steps. So he's there, and what's funny about when he does that is that he thinks very hard in that, and I'm not, and then he's thinking, and then he goes, changes that note, and then he goes, and then he takes off a note. And then he's sort of, I'm not going to explain. And then he changes the, and he likes that. So that's where John Belushi takes Beethoven's Fifth and goes into My Girl by the Temptations. And the purpose of this is to make a point. Now we go to what happens in Herbsttag, which, and so in this case there was a theme. So that's from an old piece of mine, a septet. And then the beginning, when you heard, and you can hear when we play it again, after the disorienting opening, and then it tries to find itself, and so I take that theme, and what do I do? And then I do something called rotation, started in the second note, and then I take those two notes. And then I do something which is it's a period. So it starts again. And then So that is basically taking an old theme of mine and transforming it into sort of the main theme of the song cycle, which appears in all 4 songs in a million guises. And it's this. And you can hear that a lot of ways if you're listening to it. Okay, so I want to wrap up by making 2 points about this. The first is that this is not how I thought up the theme. This is simply a story that the piece tells. In fact, the theme that came there was sort of this single moment where I had heard a Beatles song, and then I ran into the Hebel poem in a German anthology, and like magic, that's how the theme came. So this basically, if you were writing a paper about the piece, this would be great. You start with that one, and it very methodically goes into this. But I'm an unreliable narrator in the sense that that's not how it really happened. Okay, so that's point 1. The second interesting point is that I was preparing this to tell you about it, and indeed, it actually helped me play it better, because it just made me more conscious of it. So as a performer, this was a great exercise to do. So I'm going to be mindful of time now, and so I'm just going to conclude, and this is some more of that's what it looks like when Sonja comes in. The dramatic entrance with Herr, as in Herbsttag, which means fall, but Herr, which means Lord or God, is the same phoneme as Herbsttag, which is, so there's lots of subtleties. I won't go into the poetry, but okay, this little passage here, which I'll leave you with, is an example of. It's just a moment of excitement in the piece, and it gave me a lot of trouble. I couldn't figure out what to do. And so this is sort of almost a final version of when I wrote it. And then down here is sort of another version, and I'll just play it. And then that's like, and that's wasn't the final version. This was interesting. What this tells me is where I was looking in the literature, and that's right out of Tchaikovsky's Second Piano Concerto. Not everybody would approve of my going into that, but that's. And so this is just a flavor. This is another one, and for me, when I go to these sketches after something that works in the piece, it's almost like in a movie when there's someone in the next room and you can see it, but the protagonist can't, because I want to say, no, don't do that. So that is my talk.
It's not fair. What am I supposed to do now? Okay, so the best thing they can possibly imagine is a guy sitting at a piano talking and being funny. Like, there's no hope. Hi. And I know you're all his friends. None of my friends came. Yeah. Oh. This is a PC, so I don't know. I'm just a scientist. Oh, here. Click, click. Okay. And F5. Okay. I apologize in advance for not that I have some slides, but they're not very good. I don't know much about music, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about listening to Mark. I've had the chance to sit in the studio while Mark plays, and I've heard at least one of these pieces before. And normally what comes in is I'm like this. I'm this guy. He's a guy sitting on a chair. So I sit and I listen, and my mind wanders everywhere. And I don't know much about music, but I immediately forget it when someone starts playing. And then my mind just starts to wander. I'm sort of like a free-range chicken. And you can wonder about that, and I would never, I'm sure there's probably people here today who think, what a Philistine. But for me, it's the best thing ever, because any moment of free-rangeness is a sacred moment. You know, I was thinking today about what's the difference between me being in the shower and being able to think freely, and me listening to music. And I was hoping that I wouldn't have to say today that there's no difference, but in the New York Times Science Times this morning, they said there is a difference. You can tell with an fMRI. So clearly music is so different and uplifting, and it frees your mind in a way that is great. In fact, Mark gave me a CD of this, and I have a new car and only one CD because we don't do CDs anymore. So I listen to it a lot in the car, and it's different in the car because you can't be a free-range chicken in a car, or you end up in Concord. And sorry if anybody's from Concord. But so anyway, I wanted to just say that my mind wanders, and I'm tortured. But also, the other thing I just wanted to mention is that, you know, I'm a physicist, so I think a little bit about space and time, and sometimes I put it together and call it space-time. Very complicated. And the interesting thing when your mind is wandering while you're listening to music, time is really non-linear. All of a sudden, there's, you know, when they just played for like, what, 30 or 40 seconds, right? In one of the pieces. And in the other piece, it seemed forever. So, I'm just kidding, yeah. Is it going to be okay? Okay. The other thing is, Mark was talking about the game where you just, I can't remember, the ladder game. So I was thinking of the same thing. So often when I'm listening to, I listened for this talk, I listened to this CD, but I stayed in my car, I didn't move. I didn't turn it on, I didn't drive. And I thought, once I get one thought in my head, even if it's about, you know, the classic, what color to paint the ceiling, it leads to another thought, which leads to another thought. And it reminded me of this little piece from this guy, Gianni Rodari, who wrote The Grammar of Fantasy. And this is just him with the word brick, remembering a very good friend who he played the violin together with. So here we have the house full of music. It is made of musical bricks, musical stones. Its walls, due to the percussion of small hammers, produce all possible tones. I know that there is a C sharp over the couch. The clearest F sharp is under the window. The floor is entirely in B flat major, an exciting tone. And that's sort of what it's like to sit in the room. I look around the room, and I don't understand the music. So, now we've talked about, I understand, I was told that don't talk too much about music because I have nothing to say. But here I do want to talk about something. So Mark showed a lot of scores, and this is sort of our own kind of score for a physicist. And it's sort of even the musical score maybe by John Cage, you could imagine. But we use equations all the time in physics, and yet we never bring them aloud. We never read them aloud. So I'm going to read this equation to you. This is equation of the Standard Model. And you will see after I've read it how ridiculous it is. That is, I don't understand it when I read it aloud, and you won't either. But I'd like to do it just so, we don't understand these things aloud. So script L equals minus a quarter F mu nu plus I psi bar d slash psi plus the Hermitian conjugate plus psi bar I y I j psi j phi plus the Hermitian conjugate plus the absolute value squared of d mu phi minus v of phi. So what's interesting about this is that physicists actually don't read equations aloud, ever. And that's because we wouldn't understand it if we do, because we're very visual. And I don't know if you knew this, but this is the way we think. So here's a Feynman diagram describing one of the things that might happen in that equation. And this kind of thing we don't actually say this aloud either, but it's a picture, so we don't need to. So physicists end up having to talk a lot because the equations are incomprehensible. So you have to sort of talk around and through the equations, all over the equations like that. And that's what physicists do, which is why they're so much fun to be with. I just wanted to introduce who I was, and this is and what I work on. So just very, very briefly, I only have like 2 minutes. I'm going to talk about who I am not. I'm not someone who would normally show this slide because this slide shows you different scales of things, but the scales are enormous. So the smallest scale you have is some molecules, which are just enormous. I don't even want to think about molecules. So this is nice, but this is me. This is me. I don't even like atoms. Atoms are too big. I want to look at the neutron and the proton, but those are themselves quite big. So I really think mostly about the things inside the proton, and those are called quarks. And this is me, and the size is a billionth of a meter. And that's the size I like. That's the size I like. That's what I like. And these are the particles that I like, although, as you all know, matter only makes up 4% of the universe, but who cares, because that 4% is sexy. So there are 6 quarks and only 6, the up, the charm, the top, the down, the strange, and the bottom. I was in college when the charm was discovered, and then involved in the bottom. We discovered the top. So I connect with this thing. It's cool. And then there are the leptons on the bottom. I didn't find any of those. I missed that. I was too young. The leptons, the electron, the mu, and the tau, and then the things that hold everything together in terms of the forces, the photon, the gluon, the W and Z, and inside all of this is the Higgs, because it's the thing. And I'm going to tell you about, forget about the quarks. We don't care. Quarks are just like tools, like screwdrivers. The Higgs is what we're going to talk about today. Okay? And it's going to just take 2 minutes. First of all, I have to talk to you a little about me. No, usually in physics talks, they're so boring you have to talk about yourself. This is when I was younger, before I came to Harvard, I found the top cork on my shoe. This is sort of what people think of me on the right. That's sort of, when people look at me, they think like that. This is why most of my friends aren't here. This is how I think of myself. Dirac was one of my great heroes of physicists, and this is the Dirac equation, and I still don't understand it, which is why I'm sitting like that. But I can read that I gamma d phi equals m phi. It's a great equation. Just so you know, physicists try to make equations as small as possible. That's really small. That describes everything. And that's just me eating. So I want to talk to you about the vacuum. And I'm kind of most interested in this. What I want to do is take the entire universe, take everything out of it, and then describe it. Because that seems like it also might be easier than doing chemistry or something like that. So this is not unprecedented, but when we think of the vacuum, when we take all the particles out, what we have left are strange waves that appear and disappear. And if I put 2 infinite planes in the vacuum, and I ask what happens, they draw each other together because of these waves that come and go that are inside. So this is kind of amazing. It's called the Casimir effect. Beckett, he also thought a lot about the vacuum. He looks like a bird. So he did the same thing. He did the Casimir effect. He took 2 guys, Gogo and Didi, and he put them in nothingness, and then he tried to see if there was an attraction. Then he went to Murphy, just one guy strapped to a chair. Two guys, one guy. And then the unnameable is just, it's not even clear. I don't know if you guys have read these books, but then he takes the person out, and he only has the vacuum. So this guy, he's called Peter Higgs. He sort of was involved in also describing theoretical physics who describes the vacuum. And he's solving some problem in physics, and he decides, well, if there's a Higgs field in the vacuum, then maybe we can solve this problem. And so we're going to look for a Higgs field. So we didn't believe this. We all speak Yiddish. It's like you have to learn Yiddish to go into particle physics. It's like you probably didn't know that. Anyway, okay. Just the whole idea of Mr. Higgs was that if you take everything we know and you add a Higgs field and you put it into the big machine, which we've made, which has lots of equations in it, would take a very long time to read aloud. What comes out is a Higgs boson, which is a particle that I will later discover, and all my quarks and leptons now have mass. So this is a good thing, because this was the problem, that the quarks and leptons had no mass, and someone had to do something. And this is it. And really, this is the only slide you need in terms of theory. So what we have to say is we're looking for a Higgs field. I'll do 2 minutes. And what is a field? Here's the wind field of this is a snapshot of the wind. But you notice that at every point in America, there's a direction and a strength of the wind. And I won't show you the other thing because it'd take too long. But now imagine an excitation of that wind field. So all of a sudden you have a wind field, and every once in a while you have a tornado. So that's an excitation in the sense that all of a sudden it takes a whole lot of wind in a particular way with a lot of energy, and it makes a tornado. Okay? So what we want to do to understand the vacuum, we're going to say, we think there's a Higgs field there. So we want to make a momentary disturbance in that field. And we're going to call that the Higgs boson. It's a short-lived particle. It lives for a billionth of a billionth of a millionth of a second. But we can find that because we're very, very smart. Even though we can't read our equations, we're incredibly smart. And that's our little tornado. So the idea is the Higgs field has no direction. It's everywhere in the universe. It has no direction, and it has no strength. Well, it has a strength, but it's the same everywhere. And so what we want to do is whip up a tornado. We don't know if it's there, the Higgs field, but we want to whip up a tornado and see if we can see the tornado. And if we can, then we'll believe there's a Higgs field. So if you excite the Higgs field, you get the Higgs boson. So what does that take? So we'd have to put a huge amount of energy into a very tiny space. And I'm very good at that. I do it this way. I collide protons together at center of mass of 14 TeV, that's tetra electron volts. The energy coming from light is 1 electron volt. So you smash protons together. They're not really protons, they're quarks and gluons. So you're smashing those together. And because you're putting so much energy in a very small space, in a very small amount of time, you could excite the Higgs boson. And if you spend 20 years building an experiment to do this, and then you smash 10 to the 11th protons on 10 to the 11th protons every 25 nanoseconds for 2 years, you might find it. And then you might say, I'm so cool. This is the way we think about it. 2 gluons got together. They made a Higgs boson, which decayed. We get to hang out here. That's where we make this happen. And also, we just read a lot of poetry and talk about Shelley. So I got to do this because this is what, see, I got to do this. Okay. Oh, sorry. So you're sitting there, and years go by, and you say, did I find the Higgs boson or not, and what would it look like? And I can't tell you why, but it's going to look like a bump. It's going to look like a bump. So you say, did I see the bump? And here you say, I don't know. So I'm going to speed up the year, 1 year sped up, and see if a bump appears anywhere, or see if I can even use this PC. I'm not speeding up a year very much, am I? It's going to happen. Oh! Yeah, because they made me use this. It wasn't my idea. Okay. Let's imagine it's happening, even though it's not. Okay, sorry. Maybe it's this. Oh, there we go. Yeah, but I just had to speak sweet to it. This is the number of events we're seeing. And this is a mass of 4 leptons that come out of this event. So this Higgs boson would decay to 4 leptons. And all the red stuff is background. That's just stuff we already know about. But is there anything there that is not the red stuff? Oh! There's the Higgs boson! Oh. You got to say this is really so sweet. Do you want to see it again? The thing is, as you're watching it, you're thinking, oh no, there's nothing there. Oh no, there's nothing there. Oh, that's like already November, and it's like the seasons. It's like, no, it's winter. Oh no, there could be something there. It could be a fluctuation. Probably it's a fluctuation. Anyhow, I'm not allowed to look. I have to open it at the end because it's like a present. So you're not allowed to look to bias it. And see, it's kind of cool. Okay, so you guys are saying, what the hell is she talking about? So this red thing with these maybe 30 events is the discovery of a particle. The discovery of the particle is not that important. It means that we found our tornado, and it means that permeating all of space and time is a field called the Higgs field that has energy. And that's cosmic. And so now when you're walking, just anywhere, it doesn't have to even be outside. You can feel the Higgs field, but you can't actually feel it, because then it would be easier. But you feel it in your brain. It's like the thing that happens when you listen to music. Something's happening. I gotta go.
There are about 10 slides up there that you showed that it describes what I see on the paper here and what's going on in my brain as I'm singing this music. All these just explosions and waves, and so that could be this, I think.
Well, yeah, that's the point.
Think
alike. Yeah, no, I feel sick.
To